The senior director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Bradley, you also served as a national security advisor in the U.S. Senate. Explain to us, just taking a step back, how is it possible, from your experience as a national security advisor, how is it possible that from a tweet from the president, suddenly we've got this withdrawal of U.S. troops from this particularly delicate region?
It's a good question. We certainly live in a new era where a presidential tweet can have such far-reaching and significant consequences. But that's how President Trump chooses to operate. Of course, there was the White House press release, press statement on Sunday, basically essentially giving the green light to a Turkish incursion into Syria. And then the president followed that with a series of tweets that were frankly incoherent, that I think any reasonable observer would construe as a green light for a Turkish invasion. And I think the president's actions here, frankly, and I say this as a patriotic American, have been morally wrong and strategically short-sighted.
Is it so clear-cut? Can you say that the withdrawal of these troops has now unilaterally enabled Turkey to bring their forces in, given that the president has said that he is not endorsing any Turkish attacks, given that he also said he would destroy the Turkish economy if this were to go ahead?
I think it is that clear-cut. I think there's almost no way that Erdogan would have gone forward with this incursion if that small number of U.S. military forces had stayed in the region and President Trump had spoken with consistency and strength that he and others opposed it. And so now I worry that, let's remember, the Syrian Democratic Forces sustained approximately 11,000 casualties in helping the United States and our European allies and others defeat the ISIS caliphate. They've been detaining thousands of ISIS detainees. Based on my service in the United States Army, we call that breaking faith. We have broken faith with partners who fought and died pursuing shared objectives and a shared enemy. And this is going to send a bad message around the world that the U.S. is an unreliable security partner, and is going to make people more reluctant to work with us in the future, which is going to have the exact opposite result that President Trump wants. It's going to result in more U.S. troops deployed abroad, often alone.
Well, they were withdrawn from this particular area. They weren't withdrawn from the country itself. He is saying that he does, in that sense, it feels like there is a possibility. Is there a possibility, basically, that they could re-establish themselves in this particular region, or is that just a situation that has gone now? Are we a step too far now?
It's a good question. It's an important distinction, withdrawing from the country or simply falling back a bit to avoid the line of fire for this. Certainly it's not too late to put them back, but obviously we're not going to be eager to do that without some sort of understanding with Ankara. But I mean, I think the president's been very clear, including in what your program just cited moments ago. He wants to end endless wars. But that's an interesting comment, because wars don't necessarily end just because we say they end. And you'd think Americans would not need to be reminded that problems in the Middle East, monsters and problems in the Middle East, can come and attack us at home. You think that would not be something Americans would need to be reminded of after 9/11. And yet, with such a small U.S. force working with our partners, working with tens of thousands of SDF partners, we are doing relatively great strategic good. This is exactly the kind of U.S. deployment we should do more of, not less of, and yet this is the kind of deployment that President Trump is trying to foolishly end.
And when the president says that he's just looking after the safety of Americans, is there any kind of feeling of support for him? We heard from our North America editor that he was struggling to see any support for what the president has done. What are you gauging in the political circles in Washington?
I think there's been a tremendous amount of bipartisan opposition, both Republicans and Democrats, to the president's decision. Senator Lindsey Graham has been particularly outspoken. In other areas, he's been very supportive of the president, so hopefully that will catch the president's attention. But I think once the American people understand that this decision is a gift to Putin, it's a gift to Assad, it's a gift to ISIS, it's a gift to Erdogan, who frankly has not been acting like an ally lately, even though Turkey is a NATO ally. This is a gift to everyone other than American national security. This makes Americans less safe, makes it more likely that we're going to see ISIS detainees, for example, back on the battlefield, and ISIS terrorists in European and American cities trying to conduct terror attacks. That may sound alarmist, but we have thousands of ISIS detainees, and Syrian Defense SDF folks were guarding them. Now they're more worried about the Turkish incursion rather than guarding those ISIS detainees, and that's a bad thing for all of us.
On that note, Bradley Bowman from the Foundation for Defence of Democracies, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.